What happens in baptism is the beginning of a process that embraces the whole of our life. It makes us fit for eternity in such a way that, robed in the garment of light of Jesus Christ, we can appear before the face of God and live with him forever.
Nel rito del battesimo ci sono due elementi in cui questo evento si esprime e diventa visibile anche come esigenza per la nostra ulteriore vita.
In the rite of baptism, there are two elements in which this event is expressed and made visible in a way that demands commitment for the rest of our lives. There is, first of all, the rite of renunciation and the promises. In the early church, the one to be baptized turned towards the west, the symbol of darkness, sunset, death, and hence the dominion of sin. The one to be baptized turned in that direction and pronounced a threefold no to the devil, to his pomp, to his sin. The strange word pomp, that is to say the devil's glamour, referred to the splendor of the ancient cult of the gods and the ancient theater in which it was considered entertaining to watch people being torn limb from limb by wild beasts. What was being renounced was a type of culture that ensnared man in the adoration of power, in the world of greed, in lies, in cruelty. It was an act of liberation from the imposition of a form of life that was presented as pleasure and yet hastened the destruction of all that was best in man. This renunciation, albeit in less dramatic form, remains an essential part of baptism today. We remove the old garments, which we cannot wear in God's presence. Or better put, we begin to remove them.
Questa rinuncia è infatti una promessa.
This renunciation is actually a promise in which we hold out our hand to Christ so that he may guide us and reclothe us. What these garments are that we take off, what the promise is that we make, becomes clear when we see in the 5th chapter of the letter to the Galatians what Paul calls works of the flesh, a term that refers precisely to the old garments that we remove. Paul designates them thus: fornication, impurity, licentiousness, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, anger, selfishness, dissension, party spirit, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and the like. These are the garments that we remove, the garments of death.
Poi battezzando nella chiesa antica si volgeva verso oriente.
Then in the practice of the early church, the one to be baptized turned towards the east, the symbol of light, the symbol of the newly rising sun of history, the symbol of Christ. The candidate for baptism determines the new direction of his life. Faith in the Trinitarian God, to whom he entrusts himself. Thus it is God who clothes us in the garment of light, the garment of life. Paul calls these new garments fruits of the Spirit, and he describes them as follows: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
Nella chiesa antica il battezzando veniva poi veramente spogliato delle sue vesti.
In the early church, the candidate for baptism was then truly stripped of his garments. He descended into the baptismal font and was immersed 3 times, a symbol of death that expresses all the radicality of this removal and change of garments. His former death-bound life, the candidate consigns to death with Christ, and he lets himself be drawn up by and with Christ into the new life that transforms him for eternity.
Poi risalendo dalle acque battesimali, i neofiti venivano rivestiti
Then emerging from the waters of baptism, the neophytes were clothed in white garments, the garment of God's light. And they received the lighted candle as a sign of the new life in the light that God Himself had lit within them.
lo sapevano.
They knew that they had received the medicine of immortality, which was fully realized at the moment of receiving Holy Communion.